Hi guys, so today's video is going to be my top 10 favourite graphic novels that I've had a chance to read so far. I've got a pile of them next to me, so I'll go through them 10 to 1 and then just comment and let me know what you think. So my 10th favourite would be Flashpoint from the point of view of Batman. This is purely because it is a really interesting take on the Batman mythos. It's fascinating to think what would have happened if it had been Bruce that died rather than his parents, and the fact that his mother turns into the Joker, sorry spoilers, is very, very interesting to me. Personally, I think it was well drawn, well written, and just a good take on the topic. Obviously there are other stories in there that are interesting, but not as interesting as the Batman one to me, which is why it is number 10, not higher up on my list. But I do recommend it to any comic book fan really, but especially any Batman or DC fans, as it is worth it. So that was 10. Number 9 is quite a rare one. My dad had it when I was younger, and then obviously kept it for himself, so I had to track it down myself. It is the Tarzan graphic novel. It's way old. I don't know if you can tell by the state of the actual comic. It's pretty much the Tarzan story in graphic novel form. It is really interestingly illustrated, very, very well written, and just it's kind of a really, really great sort of comic to have in your collection, especially if you're a big fan of collecting sort of various types of graphic novels, not just one specific. Just an example, these are some of the illustrations. Very old school, very colourful, and just generally amazing. Kind of gory occasionally, and there's lots of naked pictures of Tarzan, although I don't know if that's a selling point for many of you, but it's certainly interesting. And I definitely recommend this one. So that one's number 9. Number 8 for me, and a lot of people will criticise and tell me I'm ridiculous for having it so far back, is Avengers vs X-Men. I love this comic. Yes, it is a fantastic storyline. It is brilliant. It's brilliantly written. The only reason it is so far back on my list is because there are others that I personally find more interesting, but that's just me. Now, this is a must for any comic book fan. Absolutely. It is brilliant. It's so well written. You get to see the characters so differently. They go head to head. They're not exactly how you'd expect them, and it is just fascinating to see what happens between them, and the fact that it pictures what we are used to as good guys against each other is totally interesting. Plus it does state a lot of political points that a lot of people can relate to reality. Obviously it's just a lot of fun. Another one that is well illustrated and well written. Just a couple of pictures for you there. I'm not going to give you any spoilers because that would be so bad, but definitely recommend a read of this one. Even if you aren't Marvel or aren't an X-Men or Avengers fan, it's a must. Seriously, get reading it. Okay, number 7 for me is, and don't judge, Wonder Woman, The Odyssey, Volume 1. This is purely because this was the first Wonder Woman comic I actually picked up and thought, I'll read it. And the fact that they've redesigned her but still kept some of the influences from the old Wonder Woman style, which I've grown to love, having got into Wonder Woman through this, is brilliant. I absolutely love the illustrations. They are possibly one of my favourite reasons for this comic book being so high up. They are just absolutely gorgeous. But it's like it takes Wonder Woman away from original storyline and changes it, and you see that, and how it links back to the other one that makes it so interesting, which is why it is in my top 10. Next one, because you cannot have a top 10 without the God of Thunder, it is Thor, A Deviant Saga. I've got this one in here because, well, for a start, I absolutely adore Thor. This was also my first Thor comic book. Don't judge. I've gone back on them now, but it's just a really interesting story. It's brilliant to see. I think generally, it's just a good read. It's one that you read and you think, wow, I really like this story. It's just, I don't really know how to explain it, why I like it so much, but it is definitely one that I would recommend in your collection, particularly this one or for Asgard, because they are sort of the two that, to me, give a story that enticed me enough to go check out the rest of Thor comic books. And again, it's really beautifully illustrated. So next one is a little bit out of the main selection of comic books, or at least to my knowledge, is Lady Death Origins. Lady Death is very close to my heart because even though she is so scantily clad and so very, very naked and probably well drawn for the male or whatever eye, she is a leader in her own comic book. It is a comic book about a woman who it entirely focuses around her. She's in charge, she's the one that is the boss of this book, and she is a boss, let's face it. She is stunning, she's smart, she's a good warrior. Generally, it is fascinating to see how she became and what she turned into, and the fact that it goes from her being somebody completely different, taken into another place, another universe, another parallel world, depends on how you perceive it, and becomes this sort of ruler, god type, well, goddess type creature, is something I find fascinating. And I love female-led comic books because although I absolutely, Batman will always be hands down favourite character, it is good for me personally and a lot of other female readers to have a comic that is female led so that we've got something to relate to. My next one is Batman Hush. This is because Hush is just a fantastic storyline. It keeps you guessing. Well, when you read it first, it keeps you guessing, and it has pretty much every single character in there you could possibly want in one comic book. It's obviously got Batman, but it's got Huntress, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Superman, Nightwing, Killer Croc, all of them. And it's just a really, really good read, particularly for the fact that it has so much variation on characters. You get to know more characters. If you're new to the stories, even though it does throw you into the middle of things, it's a nice way to sort of see different creatures, see different characters, see different sort of takes on them, and decide if you want to go further into this type of comic. And I just really love how it keeps you guessing. The storyline is truly brilliant. I think how they portrayed Hush as a villain is really, really good, and the fact that they had them all pitching off against each other. And of course, Batman's as badass as ever. So that one was my number 4. Number 3, you can't have a top 10 without this, is The Watchmen. The Watchmen is in here because to me it is one of a kind. It stands out amazingly well, and although the drawings are so old school, which is definitely a good thing, but it's very old school style, it's got such an amazing storyline. It just draws you in, and the fact that it can be related to real life, that you can portray it as if it was to happen, it's just spot on with that. and the fact that it brings in the political matters of the time and things like that is just, well, definitely worth investing in, I would say. Not to mention, it's just a fantastic dystopian view of America. I recommend it, definitely. There's nothing more you can say, just buy this one. It's brilliant. So, number 2, we're getting close down now, is X-Men Magneto story. So the reason I've gone for this one is because Magneto is my favourite villain, at least from the Marvel universe. Mostly because he's not entirely a villain, he's sort of, is the X-Men version of, say, Che Guevara, or maybe Malcolm X. He fights for his cause, and even though his methods aren't always perfect, at least, you know, he's passionate about helping his people. And to me, the way he's portrayed in this, the fact that you read his history, you see where he's come from and what has made him become the person he is truly brilliant. I mean, any Magneto fan should definitely have this in their collection, but it's also a really good view of, sort of, even though it's fictional, a good view of World War II. It's a really, really just generally good view of concentration camps, of how he went from one to another, and there's just some excellent writing from the authors of this. I do recommend it to everyone, anyone. Just get it. So that's that one. And my final number 1 choice is my hands down favourite comic book ever. It always will be, even if the others ever change. This one never will. This one was the first comic book I ever read, excluding Batman 3D, which my dad read to me when I was younger, and it's the one that made the biggest impact and got me into reading comics and graphic novels and things like that. I don't know if you can guess what it is, but I'm going to tell you now anyway. It is The Killing Joke. Batman Killing Joke, obviously. Go read it. It's brilliant. It's amazing. It is the best. It is a perfect, in my opinion, view of the Joker. The fact that you supposedly see where he comes from, but there's no guarantees, and you can see how violent and harsh he is, how cruel, but also how he sees himself. And you see this character, and to be fair, even though he's a complete insane maniac, psychopathic killer, you fall in love with him because you see that he's still charming, and you kind of like hate him but love him at the same time. And that is what you want from the Joker. That is the view of him that you need to read the rest of the Batman comics and see why it is how it is, why Batman's this character and why Joker's that, and they are the polar opposite, because they are two sides of the same coin. You have one on one hand that is completely chaotic, completely insane, and the other who is still insane, but he's the epitome of organisation and respect, and the other one is just not. And I think this particular comic shows that perfectly. Just a little sort of example of the artwork, because that is also stunning. So let's just get some up there. So well drawn, of course. It's just generally a beautiful book. And just go read it. That's all I can say to you. Also, this is what created the name of the band, The Killing Joke. And they're a good band, so another reason to love this comic book. So that's my top 10. What I'm interested in knowing now, if anybody cares to comment, is what your top 10 is. Let me know in the comments below, and please feel free to subscribe. See you guys.